Hello everyone, and welcome back to yet another Mortal Kombat video. But before we do kick things off, I do want to say thank you for all of the love and support on the latest Mortal Kombat video. It's been really nice coming back to my roots, and it's great to see that you're all excited to have me back. So, with us now back on the topic of Mortal Kombat, ready for its 12th installment, a really big question kind of hanging over our heads is who will be the next big bad, as they are still yet to elaborate on which ending is truly canonical. Whilst the Shang ending is more cut and dry in its setup, the Liu Kang ending actually presents us with more interesting variables to work with, being set in the age of the great Kung Lao, an era of Mortal Kombat's history that we have heard more of than actually seen. It raises a lot of interesting questions for what the future does present. So today, we will be touching on both endings, the possibilities that each timeline poses, and what is the most likely probability of the enemies each timeline has to offer. But as always, before we do kick things off, if you're excited for Mortal Kombat's return on the channel, please don't forget to subscribe to show some love. And if you like what we do here and wish to stay in the loop of all things fighting game related, please don't forget to tick that bell as well as give this video a thumbs up. So with all of this now out of the way, let's get onto it, shall we? Now to start things off, let's begin with what I would probably deem as the least likely of the two endings, Shang's timeline. Having absorbed the power of both Kronika and Fire God Liu Kang, this established timeline is truly a terrifying one more akin to that of the more ruthless tone of the 3D era. But if I'm honest, that's largely where the problem lies. The NetherRealm saga of games has made it abundantly clear that they do not wish to be too reliant on this particular saga. So much so that those particular characters are usually set to one per roster. Hell, even from a storytelling standpoint, they did only follow the original trilogy and 4 up to Mortal Kombat 11. Thus, I don't think the likelihood of NetherRealm tackling this story is exceptionally high, as tonally, it is rather bleak. And with a majority of characters under Shang Tsung's control, I don't know. Don't get me wrong, it would most certainly make for an interesting premise, and give us a good reason and incentive to fight the so-called heroes of the roster. But again, it always does realistically come down to NetherRealm's history and backlog of using 3D characters and ideas. Or more so, in this case, lack of. Now, being aware of all of this, I do feel like with this particular ending, they may have written themselves into a bit of a corner, because in my mind, the only individual possible of opposing Shang Tsung's rule is the literal one being himself. Yet another character that was established and expanded on in the 3D trilogy. And as I've pointed out, it's been largely neglected. So, whilst on paper, a lot of these ideas seem really fucking cool, I would really love to see that fight. I don't quite know if NetherRealm really wishes to explore those threads. Thus again, it raises the question of who else would actually be strong enough to defeat this version of Shang Tsung? Because outside of the one being, I can only imagine it would have to be one of the many other titans. Or if they really wanted to play it safe, create a MacGuffin like, I don't know, the Kamidogus, to then dethrone Shang Tsung. But again, we gotta kinda keep in mind that the fanbase isn't exactly too hot on the idea of titans. And if they were to utilize a MacGuffin, dethroning a character like Shang Tsung, a master manipulator and sinister tactician, could very well come across as cheap and a bit of a weak plot device. But this largely does come down to hindsight. And well, that's 2020. But now, let's bring it to the other side of that fence. To that of the Liu Kang ending, to which we will, once again, be talking about Shang Tsung. Now, obviously, with the soft timeline reset, I suppose, in a way, certain events are expected to unfold in a particular fashion, such as the Great Kung Lao defeating Shang Tsung. But what if I told you there was a different way to go about this? Whilst Shang is more commonly known as a representative of Outworld, he wasn't always against Earthrealm. In fact, he did at one point represent them in an ancient tournament that took place far before the very first game. Shang only became a student of Shao Kahn when he was caught cheating in tournaments, shunned by his former allies, and exiled by the Elder Gods. Shang was forever cursed to age at a rapid rate. But with a new established canon, we could indeed see a very different Shang Tsung. Maybe the man he once was, prior to his fall to Shao Kahn. And here's the thing, right? Shang always has, and always will be a fan favorite. He's the sleazy, traitorous wildcard amongst the roster, and I think it would make for very interesting storytelling if Shang was indeed an ally, but still portrayed as one that tethers on the line of villainy. It helps add an interesting dynamic between him and the honorable Great Kung Lao. This could also serve as a bit of an origin story for him, as we could see his downfall in real time. Again, this is just an idea, but it's definitely one that I would find quite interesting to explore. Now, another enemy that we would assume would be present during this era is none other than Prince Goro, the son of King Gorbak and Prince to the Shokan. Now, Goro himself has played a rather minor role in recent memory, having been a boss antagonist in Mortal Kombat 9, a pre-ordered DLC character for Mortal Kombat X, and of course, a big antagonist to Kotal in the now non-canon comic book series. Yep. Not gonna drop how stupid of a decision that was. Goro has been out the picture for quite a while, and I think if the series is indeed going back to basics, its roots if you would, this is a good way of reintroducing us to this character. Maybe we could very well see Goro in his actual prime. Hell, you could even toy around with the idea of him being king, opposed to that of Gorbak. Because, well, let's face it, Gorbak hasn't really done anything in the games for a long while. With Goro out the way, how about the likes of the necromancer Qua Chi, as he was absent in 11? Well, I'd honestly say his chances are probably pretty damn good. Being absent in at least one game makes the chances of your return that much higher. And with Quan Chi being a demon that doesn't age at the same rate of mortals, he could very well be present on this roster. And he is most certainly a character worthy of it. Plus, we gotta kinda keep in mind, Quan Chi is kind of a package deal when it comes to Scorpion. And let's face it, we know that the poster boy will be back in one way, shape, and form. Whether or not it's Hanzo remains to be seen, especially with the time period that this does take place in. So we very well could, in fact, see someone else fall into the clutches of Quan Chi, utilizing the Scorpion mantle. As for overall significance to the story, Quan Chi's always largely been a minor villain, only ever really being complemented by the likes of Shinnok's Amulet and Shang Tsung. So whilst his return is possible, I highly doubt he will be anything more than an inconvenience. Now, our next character here is none other than the infamous Shao Kahn, a character who is synonymous with the series. Now again, being aware of the time period of this era, we do know that Shao Kahn would be alive and well, but he's kind of been a really prominent villain for a while now. As you know, I'm a huge Shao Kahn fan. I love the dude. He beats your ass, he talks mad shit, and he will do it whilst your mum, at least in Katana's case. But anyway, Shao always has and always will be the greatest villain the series has established. But he doesn't always have to be the only one there. And I think that's largely been Shao Kahn's weakness as an antagonist. By having no other big bads, but are built up to his level, anyone that defeats him outside of Liu Kang just feels inherently wrong. And this was really felt during 11's story. So in this new timeline, I think Mortal Kombat 12 would really benefit from sidelining him. It just gives us a new option to push forward another big antagonist for the series. And I think that there's one we haven't seen in a while who does deserve his opportunity to shine. And it's probably 90% of the reason why you clicked on the thumbnail for this video. And that is, of course, the Dragon King Onaga. Now, Onaga is kind of an iconic piece of the 3D era. And whilst the Conquest mode was a fantastic and pleasant exploration of the realms, I don't feel like it did much for the Dragon King's character, outside of his obvious portrayal of Shujinko. But the weakest part of Deception's Conquest mode is how it does wrap up its narrative, instead of feeling the full weight of his actions, and us experiencing the apocalypse firsthand. The climax is unfortunately relegated to that of an arcade ladder ending, and with Shujinko being a mimic character that essentially wins with the power of friendship, it just doesn't kind of feel like a worthy end to the Dragon King's story. Now, it may have possibly been a budget issue due to the ambitious nature of Deception's Conquest mode, but even if that was true, the ending still falls flat. So, if Shao Kahn was to move aside, this would 100% be the perfect opportunity for the Dragon King to be inserted in. It does also help that this Liu Kang has never in fact met Onaga, so he would be unfamiliar with the threat he does pose. Now, of course, pointing out the elephant in the room here, yes, he is a 3D era character, so normally, I'd say his chances aren't high, but I think that much like Frost and Kenshi, Onaga is one of those characters that do transcend that era. It also helps that he has been in extreme high demand for a while. Thus, I will say, Onaga's chances are pretty damn high, especially with his 10+ year hiatus from the series, and with the second season of the Mortal Kombat X comic books being discontinued, and of course retcon. It does mean they have another shot at using this character. Now, our final villain here will be the leader of the Red Dragon clan, Daegon. Now, being a Denian, it is indeed very, very possible for Daegon to be present here, as Denians age unbelievably slow, but with a new timeline, and possibly even a new age of gods. Would the children of Argus really serve a purpose here, especially in mortal affairs? As I imagine that if anyone was to govern Edenia properly, it would be Liu Kang's beloved, Kitana. For so, I don't know how big of a role a character like Daegon and his twin would have here. Plus, a new timeline sort of eliminates the possibility of Armageddon. And if we're talking about characterization, Daegon, unfortunately, comes really late to the race with that, essentially acting as the equal to the protagonist. I don't find either of them very interesting in what they bring to the table with some of the other wacky characters in the Mortal Kombat universe. I think the most they could do with Daegon is to subtly reinvent him from the ground up. If Onaga hypothetically makes it into the fold, Daegon, much like Reiko, could very well be written as a devoted follower and zealot of the Dragon King. Because, let's not forget, the Red Dragon logo and clan itself is heavily inspired by Onaga. So I think this is a way of introducing him into this particular era. However, again, this is largely reliant on Onaga, as I don't particularly find Daegon to be that memorable of a character. Again, this is all simply an idea at best, but it is one that I do feel is rooted in the Mortal Kombat series. And when it comes to rebooting this universe, I do believe that there are a lot of things that could be tinkered with creatively to reboot and reinvent characters. But there's also that fine line between reinvention and legacy. You can't change them too much, but it removes their core individuality. It's a dangerous and hard thing to get correct. But I think now, with so many options and possibilities on the table, this would be a great way to rebuild a lot of characters that have been in desperate need of it. Mortal Kombat has a large and diverse roster in its 30-year run, but with so many different characters and wild ideas that do tend to slip through the cracks. With a more or less full swing reboot, I do have a feeling we could establish a new and refreshing status quo, whilst still keeping things quite familiar and in tune with the core themes of the series. But with that said, who do you think will be the next big bad in Mortal Kombat 12? Do you think it will be one of the following, or someone else completely new? Please do comments down below, as I'd love to hear what you all have to say. But for now everyone, that has been it for me. So as always everyone, stay strong, stay well, and keep on fighting, as we're back to talking about Mortal Kombat here. Take care everyone, I'll see you soon.